It's my pleasure to introduce to you our first speaker tonight. She's going to be sharing with you the passion she has for sharing the opportunity, creating a recruiting culture. Everything that you're going to hear tonight really aligns to what both Nick and Dora were just sharing with you. And it's my pleasure to introduce to you from the Rocket region, five-star director Ellen Lewis with 706 organizational recruits. Sharing the opportunity is certainly something that Erin is passionate about. So Erin, I'm going to turn it over to you, my friend. I see you got your hands up. So welcome, Ellen, and thanks for
Ellen.
Yes.
For many years, people have called me Erin, but my name is actually Ellen. All right. So what we're going to talk about is recreating that recruiting culture within your teams and within your organizations. And I want to start by referencing Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And in referencing that, we were going to start with habit number 2, which is begin with the end in mind. All right, so begin with the end in mind. And one of the things I love to do when it comes to visioning and setting my goals and doing things along those lines is I like to flash forward, right? So I want to go to December 2021, or sometimes I want to go all the way to December 2025, right? And just kind of start building backwards. So, and I start by just kind of thinking about what my accomplishments are for that time period. And then I go through and I actually just flesh it out. And so I start with, at the end of the year, I accomplished this. And I remember it started back at the beginning of the year and I had a focus of this. And so that's kind of how I'm able to kind of, and as many senses as I can bring into that experience, the better. So, you know, just that feeling that it gave me. I remember the emotions I was feeling the day when I got this promotion or I stepped up this director or whatever it is. And so that's really key. So one of the things that you need to think about is, what is your vision for your team's culture? Okay. A lot of times we think about our goals and our vision are revolving around a dollar, right? What we want in sales for the year, what we want in recruit numbers for the year and things like that. But the team's culture is like the foundation on which all of this is built. And so it's really important to just work on that. And so I want you to think about, like, say there's a brand new consultant of yours and she's at a vendor event and somebody walks up and they say, oh, hey, I used to sell Tupperware. I used to sell under XYZ, you know, insert leader's name there. And then they go on and share their experience and what their thoughts are on this leader. What she is sharing is that impact that the culture had on her. She's not going to share, she did A, B, C, and it made me feel XYZ. She's just going to share what she felt. And the thing about culture is every day in all of your activities, you're actually building culture right now. So the key is you want to get really intentional with the culture that you are building. It's so unbelievably important because it's happening anyways. So you want to make sure it's going in the right direction. So team culture and team values kind of go hand in hand. And so team cultures let's see here, it's the values, the beliefs, the attitudes, the behaviors of the collective group of leaders. And it's how they work together. It's how they treat each other. It's the dynamics, right? It's the dynamics of that group. And it's the feelings, you know, when you spend time with a team and you leave and it leaves you feeling really good about yourself, that's the culture that you're feeling. That's the values of that group, that collective group of people that's leaving you feeling that way. I'm sure many of you have experienced this. People give you feedback on your rallies, right? And they talk about how motivational they are. And sometimes they even refer to them as church, all right? And they refer to them as that because they're leaving better off than when they came, right? They came, they got their cup filled, and they feel like they can take on another day. And so that is the feeling of that culture. All right, so Tupperware's values are extend a hand, dream big, succeed together, celebrate each other, and do right by others. Now that's Tupperware's values. Now I want to share with you at Champion, our core values are family, friendship, unity, integrity, trust, and loyalty. Now these core values at Champion, they stem directly from our business leaders, Pam and Jim Clift. And that is really powerful to just even recognize there, because that's beginning with the end in mind and having a clear vision of the culture that you want to create within your company, organization, team, right? And so when it comes to recruiting, that is what you want to lead with. You want to lead with the culture, right? You want to lead with the culture because that's what makes us different, right? Every other direct seller is talking about working from home, flexibility, unlimited income, right? But we have something different that we bring to the table. First off, we're Tupperware. We are trailblazers. And that's one of the things that makes us different. But also what makes us different is your leadership, your culture, your values, right? And so that's a great place to start, is trying to figure out what your core values are, because that is directly impacting the culture that you're creating. All right. So for a couple of years ago, I kind of started getting into core values, and I started understanding what my core values are. And some of you are like, whoa, Ellen, I have no idea what my core values are. It's okay. Don't worry. You don't have to go on some soul searching mission to find your core values. There's an easy trick that you can do to get to your core values. And so the big thing is, ask yourself, what drives you crazy? And I mean, like, infuriates you, makes you so angry. That is one of your core values. So a core value for a lot of people is honesty. And so it drives them crazy when people are dishonest, tell half truths, or just flat out lie. It drives them crazy. Now, for those of you that are like, well, that doesn't drive me crazy. I mean, it annoys me a little, but it doesn't really drive me crazy. That might not be one of your core values. Does that make you a bad person? Absolutely not. Does that make you somebody who likes to lie? No, it doesn't. But for example, one of my core values is unity. So teamwork is really, really important to me. And I get really frustrated when people don't participate in teamwork and they're not participating as a part of a team. But does that make those people bad people? No, not at all. It just means it's not one of their core values, and that's okay. The thing about knowing your core values, it allows you to have grace. When you come across somebody that does not have the same core values, it allows you to be more accepting of that and just recognize, oh, that's not one of their core values. The cool thing about core values is, as you kind of get familiar with them, when you're having conversations with people, you actually sometimes can kind of start to figure out some of their core values. And when you can work that kind of stuff into a conversation, that is money. It's like you are speaking their language. And so it's a nice little trick to kind of try to figure out, right? All right. So the big thing, you want to get clear with your vision, right? You want to get very clear with your vision. There are lots of ways to do that. Vision boards, of course. I'm sure many of you have done that before. If you find a quote that like encompasses your values and what you're going towards, the culture you're trying to create, that's great. I'm a big fan of journaling. I love to download and just like brain dump onto paper. It helps me sort out my thoughts. I also like to put people on my team into positions of leadership that I believe they're capable of, maybe like the next level of leadership I believe they're capable of. And I always, always try to leave some blank spaces on there, because those are for the people that have not identified themselves yet to me. Those are for the people that have not been recruited yet. And that vision is all about recruiting, because it's about finding that next person. And so when you talk that talk and you have a clear vision in your mind's eye, it's like a subliminal message to your teams and to your leaders, right? And so, we're looking for that person out there that's waiting to be recruited, that is wanting to be recruited, right? And so that's really key. So the question is, what is the subliminal message that you are sharing with your team right now? Is it about recruiting? Okay. All right. So let's talk about the 5 tips to creating a recruiting culture. All right. So tip number 1 is set aside time to socialize. This is key. Okay. So after rally, we always went outside. or outside. We went out, right? We usually went to Applebee's. And so I remember early in my business, Pam told me, she's like, rally's not over until after we leave Applebee's. She said, sometimes, the stuff that happens there is just as important, sometimes more important than what happens at rally. And that always really stuck with me. So when COVID hit and we started switching to virtual stuff, we did have a time where we all kind of got together, did not talk about Tupperware. We did icebreakers and things like that to try to get to know each other, especially the people that didn't know us before all of this, right? And now when I'm working with my personal team and my leaders, the number one question people ask me about how I work with my leaders is they ask me about when I do my one-on-one calls with them, and they say, what do you guys talk about? And they say, a lot of times they say, I can't get my people to talk about business. All they want to do is talk about personal. Well, this is a relationship business. And so if their personal life's kind of messy, it will bleed over into their business. And so it does serve you to build that relationship and listen to what's going on in their life, right? And so there are some times, it's not often, that the entire call goes by and all we do is air out their personal stuff. And that's okay. I want to be there with them in that moment. Most times I'm able to bring it full circle and we're able to talk a little bit of business at the end. Or that's only if there's a lot of personal stuff going on, but most of the time it's mostly business and a little bit of personal. And sometimes they come in all in, their heads in the game, and they want to talk business, which is great. We get a lot accomplished that week. All right, so the next thing is to be a leader and not a manager. I try really hard not to use buzzwords when I'm working one-on-one with people. And when I mean by corporate sort of buzzwords, I mean, like, I actually don't try not to use the word stepping up, a goal, sometimes even why, like what's your why in the business. People sometimes kind of tense up a little bit, and I'm trying to keep their guard down so that they'll feel open to talk to me. So when I'm working with my leaders, I ask them, what's your focus for the week? What is it that you want to do this next week? And it's important to go back and forth on that. They don't want a to-do list from me, right? They're not going to be as invested in a to-do list as they are invested in their own ideas. So I want to hear what their thoughts are for solving whatever it is they want to work on. And I want to enrich their ideas and let them take the lead on that. Now, the way that we bring kind of recruiting to the forefront, instead of asking who you're working with to step up, I say, who are you excited about? And I try to look at their team a little bit and just kind of see where they're at. Because sometimes there's a name that pops in my head that I'm questioning. And so I kind of try and bring that name into the fold if they don't bring that person up first. Another thing is team count, of course. Team count's really important. If they start getting in those lower 20s, like we call that the danger zone. I'm like, danger, you need to recruit, drop everything. We got to focus on recruiting, right? But we also talk about that leadership count too. And we recognize if we lost anybody, if we added anybody, how's that going to affect your goals in your team? What can we do to replace them? What can we do to build more? Things along those lines. Now, my team tip for working with your team, working with your personal team, is consultants don't know what to do with new recruits. That's the number one thing that holds them back from recruiting. And so, it's great. Like I always encourage my people to do introductions with me, and my leaders know it. When we were at rally, we were in person. If they had somebody new come, I'm like, hey, don't forget to introduce me. And some of them just did it automatically. They'd march them right up and be like, hey, this is Ellen, this is our organizational leader. And which is perfect. Now, if they didn't, after rally, I would go over and be like, hey, I'm Ellen. And they were like, oh yes. And they would make the introduction. Now with my team right now, they like Messenger, right? So I asked them to create a group message between the recruiter, and me, right? And so in that, we just kind of go over the basics, right? Hey, we're so glad you're here. Why did you join? This is when our NCO is. Who would you like to join you in the business? We start making a list. I'm talking about how they could invite them to our next recruiting event, make sure their launch party is scheduled, all those things. Now, this is a great call for onboarding, of course, but you know what's really good about it? Is the recruiter is learning, because in my vision, that recruiter is going to be a new director someday, right? And I want them to be able to model this and do this with their people once I'm kind of to the side of that equation, right? All right. So number 3 is promote a culture of learning and development. So this is key. Okay. I make no bones about, I am always enrolled in a program, taking a training, reading several books about business, about improving myself. And so that is totally my jam. I love doing that. Now, something that that I love to do too is if a leader or somebody on the team comes to me saying that they're taking some sort of a training, if at all possible, I like to take it with them. Because we can work on the material together. It kind of deepens that relationship and it encourages that continual learning. All right, so a team tip here is know where the training is so that you can point those things out. Know where it is in my.tupperware, know where the documents are, know where your company has, specialized training, YouTube, whatever it is. Because when your team feels supported, they feel like they can support, right? And so it empowers them and makes them feel more comfortable about recruiting. I have found my most successful teams really focus on inviting people to our events, but they also have high engagement in a group or messenger atmosphere for their team. Now, the key with that engagement is key because if you have a new consultant and they go to the group and ask a question and get answered by 5 people, excellent, right? They're like, wow, I could recruit somebody, bring them here, and they're going to be able to get their questions answered even if I don't know it, right? So they're like, I know that that'll be taken care of. All right, so number 4 is encourage knowledge sharing. Pam's really good about catching us doing something right, especially with the directors. She just has her eyes more on the directors. And so she catches us a little bit more doing stuff right. And she's in I think she's probably in every director's team page, messenger group and all that, because she's just kind of wanting to look for that interaction, see what people are doing right, and then be able to encourage them to share. On top of that, and of course, we have a group chat for Champion. I also have a group chat for my leaders just because I'm trying to create a culture within my organization as well that complements Champion's culture. Our group chat is a lot of like, hey, check out this graphic. What do you guys think? Are there any typos? We're just kind of like helping each other out, sharing. But then also, it's a lot of fun. I mean, we are definitely known for our gift wars and just kind of, it gets pretty crazy, but that's part of that socialization right there. That's part of that bonding because we are as strong as our weakest member. And so when we can kind of encompass everybody, it just really, it encourages that bonding, which is so unbelievably important in this business. Now, my team tip is I do the same thing that Pam does with my team. And so I'm looking for them to do something right. I'm encouraging them to share. I try to message a recruiter as soon as they get a recruit or very soon after and just be like, hey, how do you know this person? Where did this recruit come from? Where did you meet them? And then, hey, don't forget to introduce me. All right. And we want to make it cool to recruit. I know that sounds silly, but people like to come in and introduce their new recruit to the group, right? So they see me do it. They see other people do it. And they're like, it creates this really great, very good organic sort of FOMO. Like, I want to introduce somebody to this group. So I want a new recruit. All right, so last but certainly not least, you want to make sure to break it down for them and keep things simple. Keep things simple. All right, so how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Right? So how do you build a Tupperware empire? You build a Tupperware empire, one recruit at a time. All right. And so I with the leaders, we try to kind of make sure that they are aware that more people, more team members make it easier and honestly a lot more fun when it comes to work in the business and hitting your goals, as are with more a stronger, bigger leadership count within the team. And listen, directors, they know that, right? But sometimes, you got to be reminded of that. Sometimes I have to be reminded of that. I'm like, what's going on? Banging my head against the wall. And I'm like, oh, look at my team count. Yeah, okay, we need to get some recruiting going, right? But the other thing is that I try to look at the dollar amount that new recruits put in each month. Okay, I am a numbers person and I am not ashamed to admit that. I am such a numbers girl. I like to look at them because then I can a lot of times, I can see the problems coming before they happen. All right, that's exactly where you want to be. It's a very proactive place to be. Now, when it comes to these new recruits, if I see that dollar amount go down from month to month, immediately, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to look at recruiting from the previous month. Is my recruiting down? If my recruiting's down, done. That's where the problem is. We need to up our recruiting game. Now, if my recruiting's not down and that number's down, that tells me that there is a break in the chain, right? So I either added something that overwhelmed people and turned them off and they didn't want to start working, or maybe I accidentally left something out, because it's easy to accidentally skip a step. You skip a step one month, and the next month you don't even think about it. And the next month, and then next thing you know, you're like, when did I stop doing that? Right. And so by looking at those numbers, it really helps you keep that from happening. All right. So my team tip is, so when you go to your team and you're like, hey, I think you can step up to manager this month, all you need is 3 recruits, $2,500 in unit sales between the 4 of you, and 500 of it has to be yours, right? Sometimes they just kind of glaze over, right? You totally lost them. Like, sometimes you have a go-getter. It's like, game on, I can do that. It'll be done in a week, right? But for the most part, they kind of glaze over. So you want to keep it simple. You want to keep it simple and go to them and just say, hey, you know what? I've noticed that your personal sales are really consistent the last 2 months. I would love to see you make some more money on that. How about, let's talk about who you would like to join the business. And you start working with them, have them come up with a short list. And you know what? If they end up, if there's somebody that responds to a challenge them. Be like, hey, in the next 48 hours, I challenge you to go to this list, work this list, and get a recruit, right? And when they get their first recruit, then you say, wow, that was awesome. Didn't that feel great? Let's do it again. All right. That's keeping it simple for them. So a year ago, the buzzword was busy, right? Everybody's like, I'm so busy. Oh, I'm so busy. And busy can be open to interpretation, right? A mom of 6 is like, I'll show you busy, right? Right now, the word is overwhelmed, and it's legitimate. We are overwhelmed by the world we're living in today. We are overwhelmed by having to homeschool our kids while they're trying to learn for their teachers virtually. We are overwhelmed by even just having to go to the grocery store and our own personal anxieties. And we're overwhelmed by the amount of people that we know right now that have been affected negatively by COVID. So we want this to be not a place of overwhelm. We want to keep things really simple for our people and break it down for them. So in closing, I want to remind you to begin with the end in mind, know your core values, and be intentional with the culture that you are currently creating. Thank you.
Awesome, Ellen. Oh my goodness. You know what? Big words at the top of everybody's notes is wow, right? I mean, you just wowed us with your 5 steps, keeping it simple, but it's no surprise. You lead with your heart and creating that recruiting culture, not only in your personal team, but really in your organization with each of your directors just following your lead. And you're a shining star, my friend. And I cannot wait to go to Applebee's again next time I'm in Northeast. So thank you again, Ellen. And now I'm going to kick it over to Nick.